This is a presentation on the hazard concerns in the state of Rhode Island. Rhode Island is the smallest state in the United States with a population of 1.10 million people. Rhode Island is a coastal state. The natural hazards that affect Rhode Island are severe winter weather, floods, high winds, extreme heat, tropical and extratropical storms, extreme cold, thunderstorms, dam failure, fire, and sea level rise. Some examples of why it's so important to acknowledge and be prepared for these are that hurricanes happen on a recurring basis and are rated as high in Rhode Island, along with coastal flooding, winter storms, and riverine flooding. There are 21 coastal area communities in Rhode Island that are vulnerable to hurricanes, storm surges, wave actions, and wind hazards. Inland flooding and sea level rise pose both infrastructure and health risks to the public. 8 out of 22 declared disaster events in Rhode Island were winter weather-related events. 9 were flood events, and 7 were hurricane, tropical storm, or coastal events. The man-made hazards that affect Rhode Island are cybersecurity incidents, chemical incidents, terrorism, biological incidents, radiological incidents, civil disturbances, and infrastructure failure. Rhode Island has many pieces of critical infrastructure that are vulnerable to man-made, human-caused, and technological hazards, such as cybersecurity incidents, terrorism, infrastructure failure, and transportation accidents. Regarding chemical incidents, Rhode Island is home to 724 Tier 3 facilities. 8 major chemical incidents have occurred in Rhode Island since 1989. The potential for civil disturbances is high, and there are 7 large-scale, state-sponsored events with 15,000 to 100,000 people that occur each year in Rhode Island. Infrastructure failure is also a concern due to Rhode Island having critical infrastructure pieces across all 6 identified sectors. Threatened areas. Rhode Island has 78 marinas and 22 ports, which make it vulnerable to natural and man-made hazards. These hazards threaten transportation routes of imports and exports, both foreign and domestic, that are needed to keep the economy stable, commercial and recreational activities such as commercial fishing and sailing, infrastructure damage such as houses and restaurants along the coast, and marine research institutes and universities. The Naval Station Pier is also a critical piece of infrastructure and potential target located in Newport, Rhode Island. The community can prepare for a natural hazard by maintaining and repairing the hurricane barriers and other structural damage, as well as keeping the public informed with accurate weather data and research. Vulnerable populations. The homeless population is a vulnerable population in the city of Providence. This was amplified even more due to COVID-19. I've witnessed this personally in my own life at one point, and see it every day in the community. The homeless population is most vulnerable due to social isolation, poverty, often not having access to shelter or communication methods, for warnings such as internet, cell phones, and lack of family members to help support them in time of need, as well as often suffering from both mental and physical illness. The community can help them prepare for a natural hazard by outreach programs going out and giving warnings to people in areas that are known to have heavily homeless occupied communities, as well as having more shelter locations open for longer periods of time during evacuations and a disaster event. The importance of hazard mitigation and climate change adaptation. Hazard mitigation is important for a community to stay not only economically stable, but psychologically stable, and with public health in mind. With Rhode Island being a coastal and primarily urban state, it makes it at a higher risk of natural and man-made hazards due to its geographical location and its dense population. This makes it extremely important to identify multi-hazards in the community. One example of this is major hurricanes leading to flooding, which leads to polluted water, which in turn creates a public health hazard to the community. Identifying these types of connections is crucial to being better prepared in the event of a disaster emergency. Climate change adaptation should be taken into significant consideration due to the rate of temperature changes in the area, as well as an increase in hurricanes, precipitation, and flood events. Without these adaptations, both public health and critical infrastructure is at risk. Making changes to infrastructure now is also cheaper than repairments after a disaster. These are just a few points out of many on why hazard mitigation and climate adaptation is so important. Now, the state of Rhode Island has been affected and will continue to be affected by natural disasters and man-made hazards. It is our responsibility as a community to be prepared for these.